Good morning. Welcome to our committee hearing of the House Committee of Water and Land. Today is Thursday, March 18th. It's 8:30 a.m. We are in conference room 430 in the state capitol. We missed the public, but because of COVID, we're trying to keep everybody safe. So the Capitol remains closed to the public, and we are inviting all the testifiers to testify remotely. And thanks to our website, it's easy. You just have to click and you can make that happen. So welcome to all the testifiers who are with us today. Let me briefly mention a few things to those who have not been here testifying remotely. In order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there'll be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Because morning hearings must adjourn before noon for our floor session, and not all testifiers may have the opportunity to testify. In that event, please know your written testimony will be considered by the committee. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify after your testimony, and turn it off after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function is available for folks if you need to communicate with our technical staff. Please use the chat only for technical issues. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, don't worry. Please try to rejoin the meeting. If you're disconnected while you're presenting testimony, don't worry. Just try to reconnect and we'll let you testify when you return as long as time permits. Please note we're not responsible for any bad internet connections on your end, at the testifier's end. In the event of a catastrophic network failure, we may have to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making, and we'll notify the public as soon as that is posted. Please maintain decorum. Please refrain from profanity or any uncivil behavior. If you misbehave, we will move you out of the hearing. So please maintain decorum and aloha. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead, members, and start our hearing of these Senate bills and House concurrent resolutions that are before us today. First up is Senate Bill 1166, relating to rentals for public land leases. And we have before us written testimony from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs providing comments. We have oral testimony from DLNR supporting the measure. Mr. Hirokawa or other DLNR representative, you have the floor. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Russell Tsuji for the Department of Land and Natural Resources. We stand in support of this administration's proposal. Primarily, what we're asking for is the ability to allow us to provide rent credits for when a lessee has to demolish an existing building that is, old and dilapidated, or put in infrastructure, these costs can be very substantial. And in order to encourage the applicant to do that, we're asking for allowance of a rent credit to the limit of up to 20 years of fair market rent or the cost of the actual project. I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tsuji. And I note also that Mr. Hirokawa is available for questions if
Yes.
Members have that.
Yes. Yes.
We also have received a written testimony in opposition from Kupuna for the Mo'opuna. That's all the testimony that we've received. Members, do you have any questions for DLNR? Representative Kobayashi.
Hi, good morning, Russell.
Good morning.
It's been said that this bill.
You have to turn off your audio. Go ahead.
It's been said that this bill directly relates to Uncle Billy's on Banyan Drive in Hilo. Isn't that a real particular and special case? And could that be handled elsewise other than this bill?
Number one, to answer your question, Uncle Billy's was an example of what this bill would help. Yes, And however, it's not limited to Uncle Billy's because we do have a number of leases that are getting into the, the 40, 50, close to 60, 65-year term where the buildings are maybe not in good shape and may need to be demolished. Plus, we have a lot of vacant land that would need infrastructure work that could utilize also the rent credit. Right now, under the statute, we're limited to 1 year. But to answer your question, Uncle Billy's was, the initial thought process, but yet we realized that it's bigger than Uncle Billy's. Now, as to Uncle Billy's, we have tried for the last, several years now, at least 2-3 years, to seek CIP to assist us in demolishing a building because the estimated cost is anywhere from $8 to $10 million. This is very substantial. We don't have that kind of money on our operating budget. However, we were not successful. And knowing that the condition of the state today, it's even, probably less likely we're going to get anything for the very near future.
Thank you. For disclosure purposes, I've stayed in Uncle Billy's years ago, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Other questions, members? Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Tsuji.
Yes.
Just a question because you're familiar with the Halikoa on Kauai.
Halikoa?
Yeah, the camps, what would you, the cabin? Where they have that sewage problem, the cesspool problem?
I am generally, I know about it only but it's under the Parks Department, Parks Division.
But they tried to do, because of the cesspool conversion, they tried to negotiate with the state to allow for a lease extension if they were willing to go in and convert the cesspool themselves. Would this bill have anything to do with that or help that?
Help that kind of situation? I'm just thinking from the top of my head. I guess it could. And this bill was contemplated for the new leases, when we don't have anyone on the property. So I'll explain it this way. When we have the land back at DLNR because the tenant has gone, the lease expired, we have that problem and we got to end up doing it and we'd like to, and if we can't afford to get or can't afford a CIP or, the state can't afford to pay for it, this bill would encourage the new lessee to come in and actually do the improvements and get credit for that. Yes.
Okay, that's because had that lessee known that the cesspool was not up to par or illegal, that they may have come in with that idea of doing the improvements with some kind of negotiation on the lease rental. Thank you.
Right now, Representative, we have other avenues and we're pushing this bill forward for lease extensions based on improvements made by an existing lessee. So that is in the works right now. We're still trying to move that bill this year along. But so we're asking for a combination of avenues that could help the state and its lessees during these economic times. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Other questions? I would just refer the members to the DLNR testimony in the second last paragraph where they describe the other projects that are prospective: East Kapolei transit-oriented development, the business park at Kule Hunui and Maui, as projects that will require substantial investments for infrastructure, that this measure would assist them in negotiating an agreement with a lessee to do the infrastructure improvements, but provide them with reductions in lease rent in order to have them finance it. So I think this is a broader issue, though it was the genesis did, as Representative Kobayashi brought up, start with the issue of Uncle Billy's in Hilo. Okay, any other questions on this measure? If not, we will move to our next measure, Senate Bill 474. And this is relating to real property transactions. We had considered a House bill that's similar to this. This is to have realtors disclose to the potential buyers that the parcel is within the sea level rise exposure area. And I'll remind the members that there is a sea level rise viewer that is online that now does have a TMK query, so you can look up the parcel. And we worked with the realtors on this so that everybody seems to be on board. We do have testimony and support from Anu Hittel from the DLNR Climate Commission. Ms. Hittel, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Thank you for hearing this bill. I am Anu Hittel, testifying on behalf of the Hawaii Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission, and I've submitted written testimony in support. I staff the commission. It is a 20-member body, department heads at the state and county levels, and 4 legislators. Chair, you know how important this work is. You serve on this commission, which was born in 2017 by Act 32. It is co-chaired by the Department of Land and Natural Resources Chair Case and Office of Planning's Director Evans, and it guides the priorities of the state's climate response. Sea level rise is a priority as determined by the Commission in 2018, and SB 474 is a step towards effectively addressing this priority. Thank you. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you very much. We next have testimony and support from Sam Lemo, DLNR, Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands. Mr. Lemo, are you available? Please proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, committee members. I don't need to indulge the matter. I think Anu gave a wonderful testimony on behalf of the commission. And you yourself, Chair, know the measure quite well and have educated and informed your committee members quite well. We are in tremendous support for this measure so that we can see responsible real estate transactions taking place across our coastal areas, informing prospective buyers of certain risks associated with owning coastal property. This is necessary not only to protect our coastal communities, but to protect our beaches from unwanted damage from seawalls and things such of that nature. Anyway, I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. We've received written testimony and support from the City and County of Honolulu, Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency. Also written testimony and support from Dave Rainey, Andrew Wickland, Jody Melanowski, Chris Caulfield, Ken Hiraki with Hawaii Association of Realtors, Caitlin Jacobs, and Ruta Jordans. All testimony and support. Members, I would point out in Anu Hittel's testimony, second page, she's suggested an amendment which corrects some incorrect description in there about who produces the flood maps. That's important because it was incorrect. But that being said, that's all the testimony that we have received. Members, do you have any questions of DLNR? Seeing none, thank you very much. Let's move on to our next measure. Senate Bill 772 relating to transportation. This is our former colleagues, who now Senator Chris Lee's measure that he's been trying to pass for 4 or 5 years now. And so we are now able to help him out. Senate Bill 772 relating to transportation authorized the issuance of special number plates to support forest conservation and ocean conservation. Proceeds going to do important work in the state. So we have testimony on this measure from DLNR. Mr. David Smith, the floor is yours. Please proceed. Now, Mr. Smith is not with us. He has not gone to Washington. He's just not with us. Anyone else from DLNR? Otherwise, we'll move on. You can see his testimony in support. We also have received written testimony and support from Ted Bolin, Caitlin Jacobs, Bryce Johnson, and Andrea Quinn. Okay, any discussion, members? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next measure.
All right. Sure.
Sure. Representative Ganadin, question.
So a special number plate is different from the vanity plates, which we discussed earlier.
This is the same thing where it's a picture of a bird or a forest animal or plant, and then it would be. And this measure has two different things. You would have two special vanity plates that would focus on forest conservation and 2 that would focus on ocean conservation. So there would be 4 different images that you could propose to get. And so the language that's in here refers to that.
All right, and so, yeah, I suppose what I'm concerned about is,
there's special numbers that are on it, and I think the image is included in that definition of special number plates.
all right, I'm guessing the department's gonna have to clarify, if we pass both bills.
Very good point, sir, and we'll make sure that only one of them will move out of conference.
Yeah, and really articulate in rulemaking, kind of like where the money goes.
Yeah, and I must say that because Senator Lee's been working on this for some time, he's had good practice in making sure the language is right. But we'll follow up on that and appreciate the cautionary remarks.
Thanks, Chair.
Any other discussion on this measure? Senate Bill 772. If not, let's move on to the next measure, Senate Bill 795. This is related to state small boat harbors, changes the criteria for calculating the various fees that DLNR may charge for usage of state small boat harbors, including requiring that certain state small boat harbor fees be set at fair market value. And it describes how certain fees are applied. First up, we have testimony in support from DLNR Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation. Mr. Underwood or Ms. Stats or Ms. Tashima, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, and committee members. Ed Underwood, I'm the administrator with the Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation. The department stands in strong support of this measure, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. We have testimony, written testimony in opposition from Tim Mann, William Jardine, written testimony with comments from Denver Kuhn Ocean Tourism Coalition, which say they support the measure as written. And then we have written testimony in opposition from numerous individuals. Let me go through them. And then we've got a couple people who want to give testimony orally. We have written testimony in opposition from Randall Winstons, Stephen Lewis Palmier, Susan Oliver, Catherine Lindell, Dana Lim, Tommy Penrose, Alethea Redmond, David Keminar, Nikki DeHart, Gordon Wood, Jay Kolish, V-Dub, and Gregory Martin. And we have a few folks who would like to provide oral testimony. First one, Mr. Peter Plotznetter in opposition. Mr. Peter Plotznetter, is not able to join us, so please refer to your written testimony. Mr. James Callahan in opposition. Mr. Callahan, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, committee, for allowing me this time to testify. Basically, I oppose this bill as it's written, specifically related to principal habitation permits. I have a principal habitation permit, and what this bill tries to do is it tries to take away the mooring permit fee structure and combine it into a liveaboard permit fee structure. So basically, in my written testimony, I show that there's a use fee and there's a privilege fee, and that every boater has a right to live on their vessel, but that right can only be exercised by obtaining a principal habitation permit, which is a privilege, and it's a long wait to get that permit. And I waited many years, and that this privilege there's no extra amenities or services that a liveaboard person gets in return for that extra fee, which is fine because it's a privilege. Now, what this legislation proposes to do is it will take away the liveaboard permit fee, and it will double the mooring fees. I'll take your mooring fee and it will double that. And my reservation is that in other places on the West Coast, principal habitation permit fees are always separate from a mooring fee. In this legislation, it wants to combine the two. It says it uses the language in lieu of instead of in addition to, and in which case I would, if I decide that I no longer wish to live on my boat and to relinquish that more principal habitation permit but still keep my boat, how am I going to be issued a mooring permit instead of a live aboard permit? In closing, I would just like to also say that Hawaii recreational boaters have little advocacy here in this state compared to other places nationally. And it's individuals like myself that are not professional advocates that are coming forward and trying to advocate for boaters. And it's the legislature that is the place where we're meeting in the middle between DOBAR and the boaters. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you testifying today. I understand that it's a stretch for many folks to do that, and I appreciate you taking the time and effort to do that. Involvement of the public is very important. Okay, we have one other testifier in person, Mr. Eric Rask, in opposition. Mr. Rask is not available. So that's all of the testifiers we have before us today. Members, any questions of our testifiers? Representative Kobayashi.
For DLNR, have you taken into consideration what was just said about the difference between mooring fees and live aboard fees?
Yes, sir. They're not combined as one fee. Basically, the structure is set up similar to what we do with the commercial fees. So if you have a regular mooring fee for mooring in the harbor, and then if you elect to live on your boat, then what we do is to calculate that fee is we just do 2 times whatever the mooring fee is. The reason we're asking for this is the live aboard fee has been in statute for decades, and it's very difficult to amend. It is never kept up with inflation, and we're just trying to bring it up to what it should be. We initially requested to have it set by appraisal, similar to the mooring fee, but some of the senators felt that that was too open-ended, and they wanted to tie it to a mechanism for the fee to be adjusted whenever the mooring fee is adjusted.
But isn't it that all mooring fees are not alike in that all boats are not alike? I remember an instance where this boater was talking about a 1-bedroom apartment versus a 2-bedroom apartment. And he says, imagine that that's the same situation in the harbor. That even, I mean, there, essentially what he's saying is there were many categories of boats, and within that, many categories of liveaboards.
Yeah, so the fee would adjust depending on the vessel size or the category they're in. It wouldn't be a one-size-fits-all. It changes by the length of the boat or the length of the berth. So if you have a larger boat and a larger berth, the liveaboard fee would be slightly higher than it would be for a smaller boat.
Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions, Representative Kobayashi? Other questions, members? Just a question in speaking with various voters about this, Mr. Underwood, many of them were feeling like there just hasn't been enough upkeep in the harbors, and it feels like this is, you're sort of, because of that, it's the harbors are in such bad shape that this is just a ploy to try to get harbor is in such bad shape that we're just going to throw up our hands and privatize everything. And I understand the strategic plan is to move forward into public-private partnerships. My question to you is, with this increase in fees that you're looking to do you intend to use this additional revenue for investments back into the harbors themselves so that some of this deferred maintenance can be actually addressed?
Yes, Chair Thomas, the statute actually requires us to use all fees generated within the small boat harbors in the small boat harbor program. When we were transferred out of DOT back in 1991, there was approximately a $300 million deferred CIP that came with it. The legislature has given us money. We've been able to do a lot of improvements. However, we're still at a huge deficit in CIP, and we need the revenue to fix these facilities, and that's what these bills are trying to do, is to generate the revenue to put back into them, so we can bring them up to speed.
Thank you. Another question I'd like to bring up, since Mr. Rask was not able to be here today. In his testimony, he brings up a complaint that he's actually brought up in court that is pending in court right now. Could you please explain to the committee what is the status of that case and how this measure might affect that?
Currently, it's a information exchange. There, he's asking for information from us. He doesn't feel like, if I understand the complaint correctly, because we set the fees by appraisal, he's questioning the appraisal method, and he's questioning raising the live aboard fee by the cost of living index as stated in the statute at 5%, no more than 5% each year. We have not gone to court. It's not to that level yet. And our deputy AGs have been working with him on that.
Okay, would this measure affect that complaint, the processing of that complaint?
No, I don't believe so. This measure would just make it clear how liveaboard fees are set. And keep in mind, we only have liveaboards in 2 harbors. That's the Alawai Small Boat Harbor and the Kehi Small Boat Harbor. So those are the only 2 harbors this would affect.
Okay, thank you. Members, other questions for our testifiers? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate Mr. Callahan and Mr. Underwood and your participation today. We have testimony, written testimony from all the different testifiers, which each member has and has had the opportunity to read and study. So we'll use that when we make our decisions. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our next measure. Senate Bill 1173 relating to ocean stewardship. This establishes an ocean stewardship special fund. And members, we passed out a companion to this, HB 1019. It is moving in the Senate. I'm seeking to move this along. We'll make sure only one of them comes out at the end. But you'll find this is rather familiar. Senate Bill 1173. We have testimony, written testimony in support from Office of Hawaiian Affairs. We have testimony in support from DLNR. Mr. Nielsen with Aquatic Resources, are you available? Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony in support, and we are suggesting that the committee considers amending this bill to include the same amendments you passed out in HB 1019 House Draft 1. We really appreciated those amendments and think that they should be included in this Senate version as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have testimony in support from Kevin Chang. Is Mr. Chang available? Please proceed. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Kevin Chang on behalf of Kua'aina, Ulu'aumo, and we stand on our testimony. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. We have written testimony providing comments by Shelby Sarah, Pacific Whale Foundation, written testimony and support from the Nature Conservancy, Malama Pupukea Waimea, Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition, testimony with comments from Ocean Tourism Coalition, and testimony and support from Will Karen and John Kittinger. That's all the testifiers we have before us today. Members, any questions of our testifiers? Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next measure, Senate Bill 1344. Members, this will look familiar as well. We did move out a previous measure, and ours did not move over to the other side. We're looking at the Senate version of that. Senate Bill 1344 relating to food sustainability, requiring Department of Agriculture in coordination with Office of Planning to prepare and periodically update the state agricultural functional plan for seafood sustainability, because they want to focus on wild seafood as a viable food source as part of our state plan. So we have testimony in support from Danielle Bass, Office of Planning, our sustainability coordinator for the state. Danielle Bass, please proceed. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The Office of Planning does stand in support. We do support the intent of this measure. Wanted to provide the committee two notes. The one note being that the state agricultural functional plan was last updated in 1991. That's 30 years ago to this year. So we find that the state would benefit from an update sought by this legislation. We also wanted to note that during this administration's tenure, the last functional plan update was the housing functional plan update in 2017, and that took about 1 to 1.5 years to update. And we do defer to the Department of Agriculture regarding the financing of the updating of the state agricultural functional plan. I'm available for any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. We have testimony with comments from the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture spokesperson, if you're available, please proceed.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser, Chairperson for the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We have concerns and we offer recommendations. Our department has no role in regulating pelagic fisheries and no authority to set policy. We believe that involving wild-caught seafood is under the jurisdiction of Division of Aquatic Resources within DLNR. Our focus in regards to fish and seafood is limited to net pen aquaculture and other farm-raised seafood. Section 226-55 governs the updates of the functional plans and describes a comprehensive and deliberative process. And we have attached that in our testimony. This will require considerable commitment and resources, both within and beyond what the department currently possesses. We strongly recommend that the measure be revised to delete the update of the state agricultural functional plan and focus on the gathering of data and information by agencies such as the Division of Aquatic Resources for open ocean wild seafood, pursuant to the tasks number 2 and 3 in the bill on page 1, line 14 to page 2, line 5. If this data and information does not already exist, this may lead to a data information-based assessment of the utility and practicality of classifying and regulating wild seafood as a food commodity in the state, per the bill's request on page 2, task 4, lines 6 to 7. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Appreciate you being with us today. Next, we have testimony, written testimony in support from Brian John, Phil Fernandez with Hawaii Fishermen's Alliance for Conservation and Tradition, Brooks Takanaka, United Fishing Agency, John Kaneko, Hawaii Seafood Council, Stephanie Sakamoto with Fishing Tales with Mike Sakamoto, and written testimony and support from a number of individuals: Kelsey Amos, Brian John, Joan Lander, Jean Davis, Meredith Buck, Nanea Lowe, Chloe Amos, Jason Medina, Maria Denzer, and Sydney Millard. Members, any questions of our testifiers? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much. Now, members, we're going to move into a series of resolutions. This first one is House Concurrent Resolution 7-0 and House Resolution 5-9, authorizing the sale of a lease of certain submerged lands at Kaneohe Bay for recreational boat pier purposes by public auction. We have testimony in support from Mr. Ed Underwood, DLNR, Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation. Mr. Underwood, please proceed.
Hello again, Chair Tarnas, committee members. The department stands in support of this measure, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony in support from Michael Van Werkum with Kaneohe Yacht Club. And members, you can refer to his written testimony. That's all the testifiers we have today. Members, any questions of DLNR on this measure? Representative Kobayashi.
Is the recreation boat pier to be operated by DLNR?
No, Representative, this is going to be operated by individual company.
By auction? Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I see. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Representative Bronco.
Can speak a little bit to this measure. This has been an ongoing situation in our community, and this resolution looks to resolve the ongoing situation about the submerged lands that are now located in front of what is Kaneohe Yacht Club. So this measure would be the next step forward, and both parties have been working together to bring this measure about.
Thank you. Question for Mr. Underwood. There's no need for the House resolution, as far as I understand. You only need the concurrent resolution, right? The HR wouldn't help you out in this official approval process. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Just clarifying that. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, let's move on to the next measure. House Concurrent Resolution number 6-6. Reviewing and approving the action taken by the Board of Land and Natural Resources on a land exchange between the state of Hawaii and Parker Ranch. Members, we have testimony in support from DLNR. Mr. Russell Suji, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas. This is Kevin Moore. Russell.
Oh, Kevin Moore, please. Sorry, please proceed. Kevin Moore.
Yeah, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. The department stands on its written testimony in support of this resolution, and we're available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We have testimony with comments, written testimony with comments from Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and that looks like that's it. Any questions of DLNR, members? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the next measure. HCR 69, HR 58. We're requesting the Department of Land and Natural Resources to submit a petition to list the Oahu pu'eo as a threatened or endangered species under the Endangered Species Act. On this measure, we have testimony from DLNR with comments. Mr. David Smith, if you're available, please proceed.
Yeah, hi, David Smith, Administrator, Division of Forestry and Wildlife. Sorry, I missed that earlier testimony. I was having some trouble getting online for 772. We submitted comments. We'll stand on our written. It's complicated. There's some differences between the state and federal law, which may not is why it's not listed essentially federally. But I mean, we could ask them, but that's why we have it listed state and the feds do not have it listed, because there's some differences in the law that we parse out by island and the feds do not. So anyway, be glad to talk or answer questions if you have. Thanks.
Just so we're clear, we can ask questions if any members have any. Thank you.
Okay.
We have testimony and support from the University of Hawaii. Mr. Nicholas Comerford, if you're available, please proceed.
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. Nick Comerford, Dean of the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources. We support this in principle. However, our issues are that we don't think that the data is probably enough for Fish and Wildlife to pass on this. We need more data on both the threats to existence and population status. And in our testimony, we provide the compendium of work that's going on within the college by Professor Melissa Price that's trying to get that data available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Comerford. Testimony, written testimony and support from Dylan Ramus. And we have testimony from Thomas Shirai. Mr. Shirai, the floor is yours. Please proceed. You'll need to unmute yourself and then you can proceed.
Okay, how's that?
Yes, now we hear you. Please
Okay,
proceed.
aloha, Chair Tarnes. Thank you very much. I decided to watch this on the video conference. I also want to say thank you to Representative Bronco for introducing this. It's very important to us as Native Hawaiians. I'm a member of the North Shore Neighborhood Board, and later another member, Bob Lionel, will be testifying as a member of the North Shore Neighborhood Board. I also am support for the Kauai Hapai Ohana, which is a Native Hawaiian organization, which is recognized by the Department of Interior. It's much needed, Chair, and it's a step, it's a small baby step in the right direction to add protection to this. Most people think of it as an endangered species, Native Hawaiian species, Aumakua, but for some of us, like my family, we call it a member of our ohana, just like how the mano is. And so also where I come from in Waialua, other places have close ties to the pueo. In Waialua, it's at Kaena Point, that mountain where the tracking station is situated on. That mountain is called Pu'upueo. And it's documented in the Sites of Oahu publication by Bishop Museum. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify, and have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Shirai. Really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have written testimony and support from Hawaii Thousand Friends, John Bond, Charlene Chun Lum, and also from Robert Laynau. Is Mr. Laynau online? No, he's not online, but you do have his written testimony and support. Mr. Shirai referred to him in his testimony. That's all the testimony we have before us today. Members, any questions of our testifiers? Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe Deal and I can help me with this. I don't understand the pueo so much that I don't know where they lay their eggs. Do you know where?
Yeah, they're ground nesting birds. They're ground nesting birds, and they are certainly endangered, especially on Oahu. The state recognizes that. We have them listed endangered on Oahu, and because they're ground nesting, they're threatened by cats, rats, mongooses, dogs.
That's where I'm going on this. The mongoose problem, how bad is it?
It's really bad.
So shouldn't we be doing something about that? Because coming from Kauai, we don't have mongoose, so the bird population is thriving big time. Shouldn't we be?
Yeah, no, it's great. That's a real advantage Kauai has, not having mongoose. That's a major problem for us trying to manage these ground nesting birds. And we certainly recognize, like Dr. Comerford said, we'd like to have more data on the pueo. The pueo is kind of a species that's fallen through the cracks. It's very difficult to, somewhat difficult to detect, and you don't really see it nesting. It lives out in these grasslands, which are like the perfect place to build subdivisions. And so slowly but surely its habitat has been eliminated without people even recognizing what's going on. it's definitely a species that needs more attention and more management. And so we recognize that fact. And the University of Hawaii has been doing some great work on developing, in conjunction with the department, developing Pueo surveys and whatnot. So we're really trying to increase the focus on Pueo. It's definitely an important species. We have no problem with doing this. We can write the Fish and Wildlife Service and ask them to list it, but I'm just saying technically that may or may not happen. But if it increases attention on Pueo and gets more, understanding, visibility, and maybe some more resources to help manage it, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, members? Representative Bronco.
Mr. Comerford. My question is, I have an interest in the Pueo. I've also heard that introduced owl species are actually a predator of the Hawaiian Pueo. Is that true?
So, Dr. Comerford, if you'd like me to help out, I am present.
Oh, yes. Okay. So this is Dr. Melissa Price, who's been doing all the work associated with Pueo through the university, and she is the expert. So please bring her forward.
Please, Dr. Price.
So introduced barnels, yes, do impact Pueo. So we have seen them in competition with them. So they may compete over territory, and it's certainly possible that they predate nests.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question is for Mr. Smith.
Yep.
For the resolution, if we were to change it to be statewide, would that put us in correlation with federal law or federal policy?
Okay, so kind of the short form difference is that the state law considers populations island by island, and the federal law just looks at the population overall. So there's a question, and do we have enough data to say that statewide it's on the verge of extinction? And on some of the other islands, it's in decent shape. It may be threatened, but is it really endangered? We could ask the feds to do that. I have no problem asking them, but I think that we'd have to, they'd have to do some studies to just make a biological opinion and determination whether it actually qualified as endangered or not.
And just so I can understand why the difference in state policy and federal policy?
It's just law. I mean, I really wish that we would bring our state statutes into alignment with the federal law. It would make managing endangered species a lot more straightforward for us. Right now, we have a lot of issues with permitting and habitat conservation plans and stuff where we try to keep everything in alignment, but there's a little bit of difference in the laws. It'd be nice to get those laws aligned better going forward.
Well, good information, Mr. Smith. I guess you and I may be working together in the interim to get those laws fixed so we can help our species. So mahalo.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bronco. Other questions, members? Representative Ganadin, please proceed.
Just for future reference, following up on the line of questioning from Vice Chair Bronco, Mr. Smith. The Federal Endangered Species Act has been used by advocates for years now to preserve natural land or habitat throughout the United States. Is the same possibility available for those arguing for the preservation of something like the Pueo's habitat in state court?
Yeah. Again, there's some differences in the law, and it's not that easy. Like sometimes we want to enforce, and then we consult with the Attorney General, and it's difficult to enforce some of these laws as well. I think it'd be really interesting to sit down with Rep. Bronco and anybody else that was interested and take a look at our, and I'm not a super legal scholar. It'd be nice to have our Attorney Generals involved in this and our enforcement people, and look at what could we actually do to improve protection and enforcement and the necessary statutes to protect species like Pueo that have kind of fallen through the cracks, both legally and from a management perspective, so that we can bring more attention to them and provide more protection and management.
I'm bringing it up because what's coming to mind is the way the owl became a symbol of environmental protection and anti-logging efforts in decades previous in the Pacific Northwest. So yeah, just keeping that in mind.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, you know, like Mr. Shirai mentioned in his testimony about Pu'upoyo, I've worked up there for years. I've seen owls, you know, up there in the early evening hunting, and you know, it's a pretty neat thing when you're on Pu'upoyo and you see a poyo, you know, out hunting. And so, you know, it's definitely something that we would like to increase our efforts on. We're spread pretty thin, and the amount of effort it takes to go out and just locate poyo, much less be able to, you know, find nests and manage them and all that, is a daunting task, and you know, it takes a lot of time. And so given all the other things that we need to do, it's just one of those things that's kind of fallen through the cracks, but we would love to put more effort and attention on protecting and managing poyo.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions on this matter? If not, let's move on to the next one. Thank you very much for our testifiers. Let's move on to HCR 30, HR 23, requesting the DLNR to establish a task force to propose a community-based stewardship program for Polihale State Park on the island of Hawaii. On this measure, we have testimony providing comments from DLNR. Mr. Kurt Cottrell or Alan Carpenter, if you're available, please proceed.
Yeah, good morning, Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Bronco, members of the committee. Kurt Cottrell, Administrator, Division of State Parks. We did submit written comments, but subsequent to submitting those, we have worked with the introducer of the resolution, Rep. Morikawa, and we feel that what we sent to the committee yesterday, I think, better represents the direction we'd like to take this resolution in terms of trying to find resolution out at Polihale, and we've expanded the list of stakeholders and downsized it from a task force to a community advisory, you know, type of council, which we think is a more appropriate way for us to engage, you know, with the community. Task force sounds really daunting, and we want to be as inclusive as we can. So at any rate, we submitted those amendments yesterday, and we hope the committee will consider those for an HD1 on this particular resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers we have before us, but I must say I got a phone call from another Kauai individual, Clayton Kubo, who many of you know, saying he had issues submitting testimony, and he says, I'm in support of HCR 30, but all the stakeholders wanting to participate should be at the table, not just special interest nonprofits. Please include fishing, surfing, and other ocean activities because they're a way of life here. Again, all stakeholders at the table, not just a few. Thank you, Mr. Kubo. That's all the testimony we have before us today. Members, any questions?
Just a comment.
Yes, certainly. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you. I just want to thank DLNR, Mr. Cottrell, and Mr. Carpenter. You guys have really helped to make this become a group that everyone can feel inclusive in, and we don't want anyone fighting each other. And I just really look forward to this going through and us getting this community group together to make great plans for Polihale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Morikawa, and thanks for your leadership on this. Members, I'll draw your attention to a paper we've distributed to each of your desks, which include DLNR's proposed amendments for HCR 30, as Mr. Cottrell had discussed. We'll consider that in decision making. Okay, there being no further questions on this matter, let's move on to the last measure that's on our agenda. HCR 72 and HR 61, requesting the Stadium Authority to identify and develop appropriate areas within the Stadium Development District to withstand the structural requirements of a permanent shipping container storage and laydown facility for use by Pearl Harbor when serving as a backup in an emergency that renders Honolulu Harbor unusable. We have received no testimony on this measure. There being no further measures before us today, members, what I'd like to do is to recess and go right into decision-making. We'll move through all of our measures today. First one, Senate Bill 1166. As I launch into our decision-making, let me tell members that I've been requested by the Senate to try to move out bills with perfected effective dates to avoid going into conference as a way of trying to be more efficient. They are moving our bills over there to do just that. I have checked in with leadership and with House Finance and Judiciary and CPC chairs to find out what protocol we should use. And they said, if we are comfortable with the language in the bills, then we can pass it out with an effective date that is perfected. And then what I would do is request a legal check as well. So that's the protocol we're going to use to move forward. So for Senate Bill 1166, my recommendation is to do an HD1 and change the effective date to upon approval. And I have gotten a legal check on this one from our House attorney. So HD1, modify it to upon approval. Members, any discussion? If not, Vice Chair Bronco, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass Senate Bill 1166 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ganadin.
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Kong.
Aye.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Ono is excused. Representative McDermott.
Yes.
The measure passes.
Thank you, members. Next measure, Senate Bill 474. My recommendation is to pass this out with an HD1 incorporating the amendments from the Climate Change Commission, which basically corrects the language in there so that it reflects that the flood maps are promulgated by the National Flood Insurance Program of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And you can refer to the testimony there for the exact language. So that's the recommendation, HD1, including the DLNR Climate Change Commission's amendment. Members, any questions? Representative Kobayashi.
It has an odd effective date.
Yes, and the effective date is May 1st, 2022 upon request. If you remember, the realtors requested May 1st because that is the date that all of their new forms are issued, which this would be a part of. And so out of deference to them, we agree to that. Thank you for that sharp eye and review.
I forget.
It's okay. That's fine. Any other questions, discussion? If not, Vice Chair Bronco for the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass Senate Bill 474 with amendments. Noting the excused absence of Representative Ono, is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you, members. Next, Senate Bill 772. My recommendation is to pass this out with technical non-substantive amendments and have it be effective upon approval. Any discussion, members? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 772 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 795. Members, you've received the testimony. The liveaboard folks at Alawai are not happy with this. DLNR has reminded us they've been asking for this ability for years as a way to make it more transparent, that it's based on appraisal, not stuck in statute. I did have legal check look at this. They recommended that we delete section 3, which is the savings clause, to make sure that there was no inadvertent expectations raised by that savings clause that this would not apply to people going forward. So my recommendation is to make technical non-substantive amendments, delete section 3, and move it out as an HD1. Any discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair Bronco, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass Senate Bill 795 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Noting the with reservations from Representative McDermott. Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 1173. My recommendation is to move this out as an HD1 in replace the contents with the contents from our HB 1019 HD2, have it be effective upon approval, and in section 3, have it sunset in 2030 as opposed to 2026. In this way, we are actually mirroring the language that is in HB 1019 that's moving in the Senate. So these will be two measures, exactly the same language, moving in both sides. If they both move out, we'll make sure only one emerges in the end. We can always recommit whichever one we choose to. And I'll work with our counterpart in the Senate to make sure we do that. So an HD1 with the HB 1019 HD2, effective upon approval, and section 3, sunset 2030. Any discussion, members? Representative Ganadin.
This is exceedingly popular, and I'm hoping that it survives. Also noting that there was an audit last year that highlighted that around 20% of the state's budget is going into revolving and special funds, and currently all of those funds are almost all of them are being reviewed by the finance chair. So I'm hoping that this one makes it through.
Thank you for your words of encouragement. Appreciate that. Any other comments, discussion, members? Otherwise, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass Senate Bill 1173 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? No. Noting the no vote from Representative McDermott. The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 1344 SD2. My recommendation is to pass out an HD1, technical non-substantive amendments, and a clean date. I recognize the Department of Agriculture doesn't want to do this. And I also recognize that Office of Planning is going to be part of this. So I would include in the committee report that the DLNR Aquatics Division needs to be closely engaged in this process to ensure that wild seafood is incorporated into our state agricultural functional plan. And they address the issue of open ocean aquaculture as part of that. And so my recommendation, HD1, technical non-substantive amendments and a clean date effective upon approval. Members, any questions, discussion? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass Senate Bill 1344 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to HCR 70 and HR 59. My recommendation is to pass HCR 70 as is, and separately, we're going to just defer HR 59 as unnecessary. So HCR 70, my recommendation is pass as is. Any discussion? Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HCR 70 as is, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to HCR 66, my recommendation is to pass as is. Discussion? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HCR 66 as is, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to HCR 69, HR 58. My recommendation is to pass out HD1 of both of these and to amend it to include Pueo on all islands. Since there is no scientific basis for establishing that there is a distinct population of Pueo on Oahu only. So let's modify the language in the measure so that it refers to Pueo on all islands instead, and make some technical non-substantive amendments. Discussion. Representative Kobayashi.
But doesn't that lead to that next question of not having enough research on all islands?
Absolutely right. And my thinking is that if the request is sent to the federal government requesting this, they list the Pueo, they'll come back and say, we don't have enough data. We need to do more research. That might help our great researchers at the University of Hawaii to then go and get more funding to do that research, because they are clearly told by the federal government that we need more research to make this important decision. It's a multi-step process, because you're absolutely right. As you read the testimony, we don't have enough data. But I'd like to move this forward so that the federal government is notified that we really do need to address this important issue. That's my strategy. Go ahead.
My concern is that, especially for a bird of this, shall we say, of this size in terms of both physical size and territory, we'll never have enough research.
It's a challenge, and our good researchers at the UH have a challenge ahead of them. Yeah. Other discussion, members. Representative Ganadin.
Years ago, I went on a bird watching tour on the Big Island with a nonprofit that was on federal land, and they interacted with the federal government and their ornithologists to learn that word in producing data. So if we go forward, I'm hoping that we can work with interested bird watchers to help the state save some money in collecting this data.
Thank you. Well, we would look to Dr. Price and Dr. Comerford for their leadership. Certainly, Dr. Price is our local expert, and we want to encourage her in her research, because it's on that basis that we can make these important management decisions. Other discussion, members? If not, recommendations is to pass HCR 69 and HR 58 with an HD1 technical non-substantive amendments and amending it to include whale on all islands. Vice Chair Bronco, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HCR 69 and HR 58 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to HCR 30, HR 23. My recommendation is to pass out an HD1 that will track the recommended language that has been developed by Representative Morikawa and DLNR with input from the community members, that you have that before you. So that's my recommendation, HD1. Discussion, members. Representative Morikawa.
Just one request, because our representative with the sharp eye and review expertise pointed out that on the fourth whereas, where it's underlined, whereas Poland Holiday State Park has a history of non-compliance on the amendment, can we please add whereas users of Poland Holiday State Park, not the park?
Thank you. So this would be on the fourth whereas. It would read, whereas users of Foley Holly State Park have
a history,
make that plural, have a history of non-compliance.
Yes. Or some users.
Some
users.
Thank you.
Not all users.
Okay, so it will read, whereas some users of Foley Holly State Park have a history of non-compliance, et cetera. As written.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you.
Chair.
Any other discussion? If not, a recommendation is to move out both HCR 30 and HR 23 with the amendments that you have before us. No further discussion? Vice Chair Bronco, please take the votes.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HCR 30 and HR 23 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Ono. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to the last measure, HCR 72 and HR 61. Because we have received no testimony at all on these two measures, we're going to defer these measures. There being no further business before us today, we will adjourn this hearing. Thank you, everyone, for participating.